Like thousands of other Americans in the U.S. Navy, he's patriotic, loyal, and proud to defend his country.
Permission to come aboard.
But there's one thing about this sailor, one thing about his past that surprises most people.
When you think about it, it's sort of, wow, it does shock you a little bit.
30-year-old Vadim Gudin has essentially led a double life.
They say, hey man, are you sure you're not a KGB spy? Of course, nobody meant it seriously.
It has been a life propelled by extraordinary change.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
10 years ago, Mikhail Gorbachev still controlled the communist bloc. The Soviet Union still ruled as a superpower. And Vadim Gudin still believed the United States was the enemy.
This is Moscow, Red Square.
He wore a different uniform back then, one with a communist pin. Gudin was a Soviet citizen. The government drafted him when he turned 18, and soon he was operating a tank like this.
We lived in a constant fear of maybe attack from United States, and our particular enemy for training was a battleship New Jersey.
In war exercises, Soviet troops would imagine the USS New Jersey and pretend they were fighting the legendary ship. Gudin says there was plenty of Cold War hostility, but not much else. He earned the equivalent of $5 a month and rarely had enough to eat.
I mean, I always will remember the hunger. Hunger was my constant friend.
In 1987, Gudin was stationed at the edge of Siberia near the Bering Sea. But 10 years later, he now finds himself helping to defend a much different coast. Here at the Naval Station in Everett, Washington, this is the remarkable story of a young man who jumped ship. But just how did Vadim Gudin get from the Red Army to the Red, White, and Blue Navy?
10 years ago, I would have said that was highly unlikely and probably impossible.
Jack Matlock was the last U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union.
And this experience of this gentleman, I think, really symbolizes the changes that have come about. I think it shows that the end of the Cold War is bringing greater normality to the world.
Christmas night, 1991. The USSR finally collapsed. The Soviet flag came down for the last time, and Gorbachev resigned.
Good evening. Mikhail Gorbachev and the Soviet Union are history.
By that historic day, Vadim Gudin had already switched sides, following other family members who emigrated to the United States. Eventually, without any special security check, he became a U.S. Navy machinist and ultimately a U.S. citizen. Do you see yourself as a living example of the Cold War that's over?
Yes, I am the living example. I mean, 10 years ago, I wouldn't even imagine that I'll be here and the things will change that much. And I joined the Navy to serve this country, to give back something.
What has this nation given to you?
It gave me everything, They took me, they educate me, they gave me the chance to become somebody.
Gudin has remained close to his Russian roots, joining Seattle's growing Russian-American community. Still, he seems willing to trade his red caviar for some nachos.
Nachos?
Yeah, and cheese, that's it.
You don't want no meat?
Nah.
I thought he was Mexican. I couldn't believe he was Russian.
It's easy to see this former enemy has become a friend. Once a communist celebrating May Day, Vadim Gudin is now happy to be a capitalist on the 4th of July.
4th of July is Independence Day, and I'm glad that I live here in this free country. I'm glad I'm part of this, and I feel proud.
For today, Farland, Chang, NBC News, Everett, Washington.